You know, everybody wants it to happen right away, and it's just like I said, enjoy the ride with this guy. I mean, it's good. The maturation of this player is happening right before our eyes.
Don't look now, my friends. Right up there, they're going to be traveling down the turnpike to D.C. Don't look up the turnpike because the Giants are breathing down the Eagles' neck. And the next guest is no stranger to that. Of course, your former Philadelphia Eagles coach, John DeFilippo, joining us here on the Football Friday Affair. Coach, good morning. How you doing today?
Rick, Tone, what's up, guys? Hey, I apologize for the blurry screen. My computer's in the shop, so I'm on my wife's computer. Sorry about that.
Hey, all good. It happens, Coach. And
hey, by the way, I heard you tell your last guest if he's in the area, you're going to treat him to the Ocean Casino and Resort. Does that offer stand for me as well?
Absolutely, Coach. Absolutely. You just let us know the word, and I'll give Krause a call. We'll make that happen. So you just say the word, and hey, meal on me. They got a nice Italian restaurant over there, the Dolce. I've heard a lot of good things. I've been waiting to dive in.
Two guys, their last name ends in a vowel. You know?
You know what it is, Paisan. And I'm over here at the Jersey Shore. We're getting ready for this week 3 NFL already. Unbelievable. I want to pick your brain, though, on some of the quarterback play. And let's start off with the Philadelphia Eagles. We haven't talked much about him today, but he's been a hot topic all week long on the whole network. Jalen Hurts, he just played the game of his life. And there was a lot of questions coming into the season. Would we see the progression, the development, the accuracy, the deep balls? Whatever the case may be, he's pressing all the right buttons. I see a much improved quarterback. You said it right here on this show last week. You expect to see him take that jump. Did you expect to see him take such a big leap?
You know, everybody wants it to happen right away, and it's just like I said, enjoy the ride with this guy. I mean, it's good. The maturation of this player is happening right before our eyes, and boy, what a great job he did. You know, I thought the coaching staff did a fantastic job of moving and shifting and giving them some different looks. You know, there were some quarterback design runs in there. There were some good RPOs, and obviously they were clicking in the pass game. You know, the big play, obviously, that opened it up was, you know, the post alert against quarters coverage. Quarters coverage is when there's, you know, the two corners and the safeties each have a quarter of the field. And what happened was number 2 released vertically. And if he goes past basically 10 yards, the safety has that tight end or number 2 receiver man-to-man, and the post route ends up being a one-on-one. So that was a great job by Shane Steichen dialing that up against that coverage and getting the coverage that he wanted. But Jalen was, I mean, that he was the best player on the field by far in that game, and it wasn't even close. I mean, that looked like a senior in high school against the JV team, you know, and boy, oh boy, that was fun to watch.
It really was. I mean, and we talk about A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert, and then boom, Quez Watkins. Don't forget about me.
Ooh, absolutely.
I'll tell you, a lot of weapons on this Eagles.
The Eagles, in my opinion, and again, I'm out of the coaching this year, so I don't have. I'm not engrossed in it like I normally am.
Sure.
But in my opinion, the Eagles have the best skill players in the NFL, like the best skill group in the NFL. And I mean, you talk about, and then you got, you know, the running back, and you know, Sanders, and you got Hurts, and you got Goddard, and you got Smith, and you got A.J. Brown, and you got Watkins. I mean, you just, where do you defend those guys? I mean, all of a sudden you try to, again, we talked about it last week. You know, your receiving group is only as best as your third option. Well, you know, arguably Dallas Goedert, your third option after A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. And that's an unbelievable advantage to have if you're an Eagle, if you're in the Eagles building, you're an Eagles fan. They can't double you those 2 studs on the outside. So you're going to have a one-on-one matchup on safety against, or a linebacker against Dallas Goedert. Good luck with that.
Man, and I'll tell you, Goddard's another guy that's kind of just elevated his game to another level. But you mentioned Shane Steichen, and I think he's doing a tremendous job with the play calling. I'm not sure how familiar, if you cross coaching paths with him at all, Coach, but I wanted to ask you specifically because I listened to Coach Ric Serritella press conference earlier this week, and he said something that piqued my interest. And he said, you know, the bond with Jalen and Shane go beyond just football. Like, these guys hang out outside the facility. Like, they're friends and spend time off the field, outside the film room, and they have a special bond. I'm just curious to know, having been in that position, how common is that? Is that something that you've kind of had a relationship with your quarterbacks outside the building, or is this kind of a rare relationship that we're seeing develop?
It sounds like they obviously get along very well and things are clicking there right now. So, um, to get to, I'll start off with, I'll work my way down that question. First off, you got to give a lot of credit to Nick Sirianni, okay? Because here's a guy that really didn't call plays in Indianapolis. All right, Frank Reich called the plays, so he gets a shot to be a head coach and doesn't have the ego to say, I have to call the plays. If I need to be the best head coach I can be for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think I got a really good coordinator that I hired, okay, that I know can call the plays, that allows me to be a better head coach. Excuse me. Hats off to Nick Sirianni for recognizing that, number one. Number two, okay, Shane Steichen and I have been friends for a long time, just competing against each other, hanging out at combines, just through the circles, and a guy I've had a ton of respect for a long time. So again, number two, that's not shocking. He's doing a great job. He's a really, really good football coach. And then talking about the relationship with Jalen and with Shane, that you got to have trust. I mean, relationships are all built on trust, whether it's with anybody in your life. So obviously those two guys trust each other, and trust is built in a lot of ways. It's on the field, it's off the field. And I'm sure that those two guys, enjoy spending time together, but there is probably that separation too between, there has to be a little bit of professionalism there as well.
Sure. And, listen, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I mean, you hear all kinds of different stories out there, and I've read biographies where, you hear like Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, all the respect in the world inside the facility, somewhat icy outside of the building, didn't really have much of a personal relationship. And I know Brady was close with Robert Kraft, not so much with Bill Belichick. I was just curious to get your impressions there.
Yeah. Early in my career, I probably didn't do as good enough job at that, and when I was a young coach, and probably this is because I was young, and I tried to make sure that there was that separation there. But that's something that, as I self-scout myself, going through the ranks, is I felt like I don't know. You'd have to ask the guys I coach. I tried to be better at that, and at least talk about like a case in point, I try to ask about their families every single day. You know what I mean? And that to me is important. And making sure my wife knew their wives and kids and all those things. And so it puts a little human element to it, because the season's hard enough, and there needs to be some human element to it to get through it. And by the way, hey Chris, thanks for I'm reading the comments here. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, Coach John DeFilippo, a lot of love in the chat room each and every football Friday here on the Football Playbook. And no, that's great insight, Coach. And I appreciate you being so candid and open with us and doing the self-scouting. And Carson Wentz, your old buddy, did a lot of that as well. And he said this week, he was obviously younger in Philadelphia. He's been traveled now in Indianapolis, his third team. But he said, I could have been a better person and probably a better teammate during my time in Philadelphia. So take us back. What was your relationship with Carson? What was Carson's relationship with his teammates?
My relationship with Carson was very, very professional. We kind of bonded over our alma maters. We're big time rivals, James Madison and North Dakota State. So we would, go back and forth a little bit, and because we were always ranked number 1 and number 2 in FCS. So we always used to joke about that. But Carson and I thought had a really good relationship. I know there's some things out there that, there was some strain between us. I didn't feel that. You'd have to ask him. I did not feel that. I think anytime you go through, you have a rookie quarterback, I think you're trying to instill some things in him to help him play at the NFL level, especially a guy that hadn't played a lot and was coming from the FCS. I don't think there was any strain there. I mean, I saw Carson this summer at the Commanders camp, and it was great to see him and spend 15, 20 minutes with him. And but that's big of Carson to say, because I mean, just think about it. As you go through life and doing anything, I mean, you make mistakes, and I've made my fair share for sure as a position coach, as a coordinator, and you learn and you move on, and you do the best you can in your next stop, learning from those experiences. So I did not read Carson saying that. I've not read up on the Commanders media. I've read up on the Philadelphia media, but I've not read up on the Commanders media yet. But it's really cool for him to say that, because we can all get better.
Yeah, I just saw that quote this morning, actually, right before the show, and I thought it was interesting. And, for the most part, both Hurts and Wentz has kind of taken the high road here in the overall quotes. And, hey, it's just another game. But let's be honest. I mean, both of these guys, like from Hurts' standpoint, he wants to prove that he deserved this position. And I got to assume from Wentz, even though he says, oh, you try not to make it a bigger deal than it is, I mean, he's got to want to try to stick it to his old ball club, right?
We're all human. We all have emotions. We're all human. There's no doubt that's going through both those guys' minds. The thing about it, what you got to do is you got to channel that and find a way to not make the game about you, and make it in your wishes, and you got to make sure. And I'm sure both quarterback coaches have had these talks with both these guys this week, and let the game come to them. I mean, that's part of your job as a quarterback coach, is not only managing the player on the field, but off the field, and talking him through, all these things about, going back to, or, playing against your old team, maybe a coach you didn't like, or a place you got cut, or, a coach, even from a coaching standpoint, a place you got fired, all those emotions go through you as you're getting ready for a game. But at the end of the day, you got to make it all about the team. That's what's so great about football. It's team above self. And you got to make sure that you channel those emotions, especially early in the football game, because that's when, you don't want to make a mistake where the tide of the game changes, or you give the Commanders a short field, or you give the Eagles a pick six, or whatever. I'm talking about both sides here. You just got to make sure that you go out and do your job and channel those emotions. So it'll be interesting to see early in the game, how those guys do. Hey, Jeremiah, thanks, brother.
Yeah, a lot of love for Coach Flip here joining us on the Football Playbook. It's interesting. We had John Keim from ESPN, Matthew Paris from the Washington Times, both beat reporters for the Washington Commanders. They said the crowd there in D.C. could be close to 40 or 50% Philadelphia. They got busloads going down by the dozens down there to the D.C. area. What kind of message do you give a quarterback there at his home field, where, Wentz could be facing almost a road game situation with the Boo Birds out there? I'm sure he's going to hear a lot of negativity. Do you address that before the game, or at this point of his career, like, does he know what to expect? How do you kind of handle that as a coach?
I think he knows what to expect. You'd address it. You would make it an issue and just say, hey, and the way they're probably going to address it, the Commanders, if I was in that room, was, hey guys, on Thursday, we better practice some silent cadence on third down in our third down practice. So, you see that a lot in the LA teams. I mean, we went out in 2017 to play the Chargers in that stadium. Remember when they were in flux there? That one year they were playing in that small stadium there in LA somewhere. It was 75% Eagles fans that game. I mean, it was literally a home game for the Eagles. And, Philip Rivers said it after the game, so it was the Eagles fans travel. They're everywhere in America. I mean, they're everywhere. And I mean, they're down here in Florida. I see a ton of Eagles gear down here. People just wearing Eagles gear down here. So, that's not shocking that you're hearing that news. That doesn't shock me at all. And I think the Commanders need to be ready on third down in the red zone to have some silent cadence.
Interesting. Yeah. Philadelphia, one of the best fan bases that travels for sure. Let's talk about the Carson Wentz performance now. The Commanders did not defeat the Lions, but the offense was effective again. They put a lot of points on the board. They have one of the top third down efficiency ratings in terms of conversions. Wentz, for the most part, played solid. A couple turnovers there, maybe not entirely his fault. Not sure how much you saw of it, Coach, but what did you take away from the Carson Wentz performance there in week 2?
Carson's had a good start to his season. He really has. Carson's just got to make sure he avoids that big mistake, like where you're going to see in week 1 and week 2. Just do your best you can to. We always just say make sure every drive ends in a kick. Whether you put, and it's okay to punt the football. It's okay to punt it. So I think when you're playing a game in the division, and this is a big game for both teams. I mean, this is a big game. They're all big games, but I mean, whenever you play a divisional game on the road, it's huge. If the Eagles could pull this one off, it's almost like winning 2 games when you beat a team and then you win on the road. I mean, that's almost like winning 2. So, but Carson's been playing well. I've been really impressed with him. I think his feet have been calm in the pocket. I think he's been staying back in the pocket. He's driving the football the perimeter. He looks healthy. I think Carson's primed to have a good game. Now that being said, I was impressed with the Eagles' defense the other night. I thought you guys had said something about not bringing pressure on the last week. I thought Jonathan Gannon did a really nice job of dialing up his pressure, especially in the red zone. I mean, that was I love Kirk. I'm a huge Kirk guy, as you guys know. But the interception, and that was cover 0, and Kirk didn't peek to the line was sliding to the left, and Kirk didn't peek right, and that's why that linebacker was hot. That was a hot play. That guy was unblocked. So you got to, whenever you slide the line one way in a 5-man protection, you got to peek that other side because you got to know whether they get the ball out or not. So I thought they did a really nice job.
That was a great segue into my next topic of conversation, because we talked about Kirk Cousins, one of your proteges, here last week on the show, and we didn't know how that game was going to go. What is it, Coach, about primetime football with Kirk Cousins? Is it a coincidence? He's now 2-10 on Monday Night Football. Primetime record is below what his usual record is. Is it a coincidence thing? Is it a performance thing? Is it just more pressure when you're on primetime, the only game, national spot? Like what has been that hindrance, do you think, with Kirk when it comes to the primetime affair?
Well, I don't think it's not like Kirk. I'd have to dive into the analytics a little bit. I mean, there were some games in Washington that he was not. They weren't very good. You know what I mean? So, and they're maybe they're going on the road and having to play obviously a primetime game. You're playing usually a bigger market, big good team. It's not like Kirk. I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fascinating, really.
It kind of is what it is. And I've been around Kirk in primetime games. I mean, we went to LA and threw up 500 yards of offense against the Rams on Thursday night. I mean, and then, we struggled, and we go on the road against Chicago, which is a hard place to win on Sunday Night Football. And we go to Seattle and against the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. And those are hard games to win on the road. So I think you'd have to dive into the analytics and figure out why. Was the team overmatched? Was the game on the road? Was it a short week? I just think a lot of it's probably coincidence because, I mean, Kirk's a darn good player. We talked about it last week, and I just thought the Eagles did a really good job challenging those guys.
And so, we're talking about the Eagles here on the Football Playbook with Coach Flip, and they got to get through Carson Wentz this week. And then next week, oh, by the way, Doug Peterson, another good friend, they're going to be facing. And Trevor Lawrence is a guy that I think right there with Jalen Hurts. You talk about Jalen Hurts in the NFC. Trevor Lawrence might be the most improved quarterback we've seen in the AFC. This guy just looks like a revived man.
He had a really good game. I'm down here, so I hear about it and all those games are on down here. He played good week 1. I wouldn't say he played great. He really started off really, really slow. Week 2, obviously, he was lights out. And again, year two, and obviously Coach Peterson's doing a good job of putting him in good spots. The thing about when you preview the Jacksonville Jaguars, in my opinion, is how much better they are on defense. I mean, they had a hard time last year stopping anybody, and so they spent a lot of money this year on defense, and they're playing well. But yeah, there'll be an interesting homecoming for Coach Peterson.
Yeah, Saxonville, they need to get back to the roots where had that run a few years back. They went right into the AFC Championship. It was predicated around the defense. They got away from that in recent years. So good point there. Before we let you go, let's talk about some of the other performances that caught your eye there around the league in week 2 of the NFL. Who stood out to you?
You got to give kudos to Jimmy G. I mean, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo was, to me, that was as good a mental performance as it was a physical performance. Just think of what that guy's been through, all right, for a second. All he does is win. I mean, he's won a lot of games there in San Francisco, okay? Takes the team to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they didn't win, okay? But he still took a team to the Super Bowl. They draft a first-round quarterback. They trade up. They give up a king's ransom to get a quarterback, okay, to replace him. And all this offseason turmoil of, is he back? Are we going to trade him? Are we going to cut him? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? He didn't, you know, we're not going to have him come in camp. To show up and do what he did was as good a mental performance as I've seen in a long, long time for everything that he's been through there. So I was really, really happy for him. I've never met Jimmy. I've never met him. I've heard he's a heck of a guy. But I was just happy for him as a person. And it goes to show you, you know, we won a Super Bowl in Philadelphia with a backup quarterback, guys. The backup quarterback is an important position, okay? It's an important position. So kudos to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch for, you know, signing him back, and kudos to Jimmy G for not having the ego to say, hey, you know what, you know, take a hike. So and then, you know, Tua, you got to give Tua, the guy.
Oh, wait a second. Before we get to Tua, though, I want to follow up on Jimmy G, because to your point, the way he handled that whole situation during the whole training camp and preseason, I mean, there's a lot of egos in the NFL. He just kind of sat back patiently, waited. To your point, they win when he's in the lineup. And oh, by the way, they lost a lot of games when he wasn't in the lineup, right?
Look at that regime's record when Jimmy's not the starter. I think it's like 8-27. So I think Kyle Shanahan's one of the best coaches out there. And it just goes to show you how important that quarterback position is. And now they've got 2. They got a young guy they really believe in. And I think all of us as NFL fans, you know, and I consider myself, I'm a fan this year, we're bummed for Trey Lance. You know, you never want to see a guy like that, you know, that you want to watch mature and grow and, you know, take that next step. And all of a sudden, you know, he's got the ankle and he's out for the year. So I think most of us were pretty bummed for him.
Well, it goes back, though, to an old football adage, though. They say quarterback's the most important position in the game, and they say the backup quarterback is the second most important position in the game, because look at the Cowboys right now without Dak Prescott.
Right.
You know, their whole season could go up in flames. So we're talking to the one, the only, the great Coach Flip, and I know you were going to get into Tua. That was an unbelievable fourth quarter performance, down 21 points. And I think there could be an upset alert brewing this week against Buffalo in Miami, but what a performance. There was a lot of questions about, could he take the next step? Could he thrive? Could he be the franchise guy? They got Teddy Bridgewater there as a backup, but what a remarkable performance. And oh, by the way, it helps when you got thrown at Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I mean, this is speed burners on the outside.
And I don't know if Tua will be, well, time will tell if he can, you know, continue making that upward progress. But again, good for him, man. You know, I mean, a guy that, again, the mental toughness of these quarterbacks, that's what people don't understand, is you got to be physically tough, but more mentally tough. They try to go out and get Deshaun Watson. They try to replace this guy. Everyone's saying, hey, it's too small. His arm, blah, 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 blah. You know what? Good for him. He went out on the road. I got to check to see what their final stats were, because when in 2015, Cleveland Browns went into Baltimore and threw for 456 yards. I got to see if that was a stadium record. I got to go see if they broke that last week. They probably did. Josh McCown. But anyway, good for Tua going on the road and you know, and doing that and throwing for all those touchdowns and you know, good for him. And hey, give it up to Darius Slay. You know, I mean, that was his I know we're on the Eagles podcast, you know, and that was an impressive freaking game as well for him. So those are three guys that I wrote down that in my mind stood out.
No doubt about it. You know, since you brought him up, I got to add, because you really maximized D1 Josh McCown. And there was a lot of talk there at the end of his career. Like, I remember they were talking about he might get a coaching offer. Then he came back and backed up another. Then last time I heard, I think he was coaching high school football. Have you spoken to Josh McCown? What is he up to?
He's down in Texas right now. He's down in Texas coaching his kids. His son Owen is probably by the end of the year is a freshman, probably going to be starting for the University of Colorado. So I mean, Josh has an unbelievable family. He's an unbelievable person. I think Josh, whenever he decides if he wants to coach in the NFL, will have multiple opportunities to do so because he's such a great guy and he's been around so many teams and playbooks and coaches, and would be a tremendous coach himself. And I just know, I think, you know, at the end of the day, I think Josh is torn between getting his boys through high school and helping them through but I think anytime he wants to go back, he'll have that opportunity.
Yeah, it's always a tough deal juggling the family and coaching act. And but we saw when he was a player, he was like a coach on the field, essentially. So I do think he has a bright future if he wants to be a coach one day in the National Football League. And then not sure if you cross paths with GJ Kinney. I had him on a couple weeks ago. He's the head coach now down in Incarnate Ward, former Philadelphia Eagle. Were you there at all when he was on the roster?
I wasn't. I've heard great things about him. They had a big Incarnate Ward beat somebody pretty good, I think.
Yeah, they beat an FBS opponent, and they got a quarterback throwing the ball all over the schoolyard down there. He throws for like 400 or 500 yards a game, and they got a big-time wide receiver, and they're one of the better up-and-coming programs. He's only 33 years old, and he's got a head coaching gig. So, you know,
that's great.
Just another name to keep an eye on there when you're talking about former Philadelphia Eagles quarterbacks, and they used him a little bit in the return game, and a guy that he's a football lifer. He played in the Arena League, the CFL, the UFL, all these different leagues, and now 33 years old with a head coaching gig. So just kind of wanted to get your thoughts there. Anything else you want to get off your chest, Coach, before we let you boogie?
No, I'll tell you what, it's been fun watching these Eagles play. I mean, and you know, I'll tell you, there were some really good design plays on Monday night. I was shocked that the Vikings didn't challenge the Eagles receivers more and really, didn't get up in their face a little bit more. And they kind of let them run free. And so it'll be interesting to see what the Commanders saw on tape in terms of that, where they feel like if they have to challenge the Eagles. Because to me, if you sit back and let those guys that we mentioned earlier in the show just run around, you're going to have a long day, a really long day. But see, when you're defending the Eagles, in my opinion, the X factor is Jalen Hurts, because, I mean, he can just kill you with his feet. So, I'm not a defensive coach, and I'm not knocking the Vikings, but it was just interesting to see from an offensive coach standpoint. Very rarely do you see as much free access as you saw Monday night, where guys weren't getting challenged to the line of scrimmage. So that will be interesting to see how the Commanders see that tape.
No, it was puzzling. It's definitely been a topic of conversation throughout the week here on the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. And I can't thank you enough, Coach, for joining us here on a Football Friday. I mean, what a listening pleasure it is for me, for our audience, the chat room people. They love it. So what do you say we do it again next Football Friday?
Let's go, baby. I'll see you guys at 11 o'clock next week right here. Tone, Rick, have a great weekend. Eagles fans, Chris, Jeremiah, okay? Have a great weekend, baby. Go Eagles.
All right.